What is up, YouTube? Thank you guys so much for coming back to my channel. I'd like to give you guys a nice little update of my thoughts on Bitcoin and where I expect this to potentially go in the near future, and using supply and demand to identify institutional buying and selling so you guys could get spot on entrances for your short to medium to long term positions. June 18th of 2022, I've made multiple claims of where exactly I thought institutional buying was going to show up on Bitcoin. Back in June 18th of 2022, I've made clear statements that there is obvious weekly demand sitting for Bitcoin at $17,000 and $16,000. Now, if you're not aware, I do have my own Discord group where I give awesome information on how we can identify institutional supply and demand selling. If you go into the left-hand side of my server, you're able to access the supply and demand 101 PDF for free of charge. I will not charge you guys a penny for this document. Now, the one thing that we always like to identify and why it's important to identify supply and demand is the simple fact that when there is a value and need for something, we call that a demand. When there is an abundance or overvalue of something, we call that a supply. Now, when we often try to identify a demand, we're either looking for some sort of a basing red candle followed by a rally that engulfs that previous red candle's trend, or in this case, a rally base rally. Now, going back into the actual Bitcoin chart, back in that 16,273 level that I actually had marked on my actual Discord and on my tweet back in June 18th of 2022, you can see clearly here that we had a marked demand at that $16,272.85. Now, going back to that level, how we actually identified that was actually the same way we would normally identify any demand: a rally base rally. Essentially, what this candle setup means is that there has been institutional selling back at that 16,273, but the following week buyers came in to establish some sort of an order block or a support at that 16,273. So if you go back into my PDF copy, you can see very clearly here we outline that rally base rally on how we identify a demand. Now, what does this mean for you if you're trying to spot any demand in Bitcoin's chart? Now, going in a long time frame like the weekly chart, you'll very much notice one important key factor. In order for a demand to essentially break, you would need a printed confirmation, otherwise a red candle underneath that demand. And it never actually printed underneath that 16,273. Now, this does a couple of things. It lets us know there is obvious institutional buying at that 16,273 price. And back at this range, you'll notice a very clear break of structure from a downward trend reversing to the upside. Now, if you believe in candle pattern setups or not, or pattern setups at all, it kind of all matches up if you're able to identify this clear institutional demand. Well, obviously, Brian, how do we know if a demand is actually broken? Let's go ahead and take a look at the territory all the way back in May of 2022 and try to identify any clear demands in that structure. You can see very clearly here we have a huge outline of buyers stacking in at that $32,000 range. Now, going back to that same PDF copy located into my server, you could identify over here in the copy, it states, what creates a demand? A drop base rally. Going back into that Bitcoin weekly chart, you can see the drop, the base, and the rally. We have a clear demand structure at that range. But I want everyone to understand this. The more touches that we have at a demand, the weaker that it gets. You can kind of say that these demands act as a basket of goods. When there are people wanting to buy these baskets of goods and there are no goods left in the basket, there is nothing left of value in that basket. And when we had multiple touches of Bitcoin at that $32,000 price, that ended up breaking that demand. Now, back in February 12th, I made a very clear statement that there was a huge falling wedge consolidation that eventually reversed at that same weekly demand that I had drawn. Now, you could see buyers ended up holding that demand, forcing buyers to step all the way through to proceed into the next supply. you'll clearly see here at that 25,088, there is a clear basing green candle followed by an engulfing red, signifying a supply at that range. Now, in order for a supply to be broken, we need a printed confirmation above that range, signifying a clear break of that structure. At that current moment, I was giving everyone warning that in order for Bitcoin to clear into the next supply, we would need a weekly confirmation out of that range. Now, noting back at that $25,000 spot, you'll notice that we did eventually break it. It took some time. Buyers stepped all the way through, and we proceeded to test into that $32,000 supply where we have an actual drop based drop. In the actual PDF copy that I've shown you guys multiple times, the drop based drop, it's very clear. We have a weekly supply established at that 32,201 range. And to prove my justification of my thoughts of how strong supply zones can be, we can clearly outline that drop based drop supply of a rejection. And you'll notice for the next couple months, we've had rejections at this actual spot. But my theory clearly states the more times that we touch a supply, the weaker the supply zone gets. And eventually, back in October 23rd of last month, we eventually broke above this supply, having us have the chance to test into $40,000 to the $37,000 range. Brian, did you even let anyone know your thought process of what's going to happen after that $32,000 level? It's a matter of fact, I did let everyone know. On November 6th at 1:24 p.m. Pacific time, I've told everyone I've been very vocal of my thoughts on Bitcoin's recent long-term sentiment. In the past, I brought up the importance of crucial supply zones and printing above on those weekly charts in order to show bullish sentiment. And I'm making a statement that Bitcoin is going to test 37,726. Now, how I got that number was I extended the top of that supply zone and I extended it to the bottom of its range. And you can see very clearly now, Bitcoin actually approached that 37,200 level that I was telling everyone about, and we have a obvious clear rejection. We printed into that supply zone and we have a slight rejection. Okay, Brian, that's fine and dandy. You're able to find out where the supply zone is at. What do we do now? Now, if I knew where exactly Bitcoin was going to go, I wouldn't be on YouTube. I'd be working in Wall Street trying to predict the next market trend of any financial market. But from the perspective that we've always learned, look for some sort of consolidation to let you know a story. We've always liked to let everyone know, oh, some people believe that patterns don't work. But I come to believe that patterns give a clear indication of a potential reversal. Now, if you look at the multiple trends where we've had strong reversals, retesting a break of supply, you'll notice we have one, a falling parallel channel, otherwise known as a falling wedge. After this falling parallel channel broke, we proceeded to test the high of the supply and eventually had a nice little move up. Same thing over here. You can categorize this as a bullish consolidation where we eventually the consolidation breaks above. And it happens multiple times. We have another falling parallel channel that reverses course into the supply. We have another falling channel that reverses into the top of the supply. So these little patterns are going to present themselves every single time. And if I were you, what I would end up doing is find the actual demand that's going to be set forth. We do not have a supply anymore of this 32,201 range. And what we're trying to identify now is if Bitcoin is going to establish some sort of demand. Now, if you want to learn how to do supply and demand, again, go into my Discord group and we need to identify any of these basing situations where Bitcoin is creating some sort of a demand value. It could be we consolidate in the range, right? And we have a nice little push to test the top of that 40,231 supply. We need to look for any indication that's going to let us know that we're going to have an eventual strong move, because right now we're sitting at this range. There is no clear structure to be made, and we're not bullish to 46,996 until this 40,231 range level is broken. So look for your key indications, identify if there's any clear structure or pattern being made. At the moment, I can see a little bit of a falling parallel channel or a bullish consolidation in that 4-hour range. But right now, it is too early to tell. We will need to see a couple more weeks of information to see how strong this trend is going to be. We can see Bitcoin test out in the next 5 days higher into this 40,231 supply. But you should not try to buy long in these situations. It's always best you look for some sort of establishment of a demand or some sort of dip back into a specific area for you to get a better buying opportunity instead of trying to chase into a 52-week high. It just doesn't make any sense on my end. Now, if you guys are interested in staying in tune with me and making sure that you're in track of my actual opinion of Bitcoin, make sure that you guys subscribe to this channel. You go ahead and follow at Brian_Gualberto. I'll be posting my thoughts on Bitcoin periodically about it, and we could go ahead and try to figure out Bitcoin's medium-term sentiment, hopefully in the future. And also as well, we have a Facebook group called Crypto and Stocks for Everyone. I will be posting this link in the actual YouTube description. So if you guys are interested in looking for a group where we post important information on the actual stock market and Bitcoin, and you want to see great information like this, come join the Facebook group. Come join the Discord group. I'm sure you guys are going to find something there that actually helps you guys out in your actual analysis. And once again, guys, thank you so much for your patience. I hope to see you guys in future videos.